You probably know who Janet Yellen is, and if you don't, you probably should, because she's in charge of the U.S. economy. She's also the Federal Reserve Chair. But did you know she's also married to one of the most influential economists in the world, George Akerlof, the winner of the 2001 Nobel Prize in Economics. We spoke to him about his new book, Phishing for Phools, which he co-wrote with another Nobel laureate, Robert Shiller. I asked him what inspired him to write it.
Well, I think various reasons inspired us to write this. One is we think that people's view of the economics system is not quite accurate. So this is a more accurate view of what a free market system does. But I think a major reason that inspired us is we think morals are very important. And our view of the economic system and what the economic system does corresponds to a great deal to what we think is moral. And so the idea that if markets just do everything that's right, then whatever people do in the markets, that's okay. But we think there's not just an upside to free markets, which we applaud and which we talk about considerably in the book, but there's also a serious downside to free markets.
So let's extend that conversation a bit. I mean, you talk about the moral issue, you talk about the downside of the free markets, so to speak. Give us an example.
Okay, so here's an example. If what standard economics says is if people can make a profit to give you what you want, then it will do so. That's what an economic equilibrium is all about. What this book says, if you can be tempted to buy something or to engage in some service, then free markets will give you that too, again, as long as a profit will be made. Now, you might think that this distinction would be a distinction that made no difference. Most of the things people buy is what they want. But actually, one of the amazing things that we discovered when we wrote this book is no, on the contrary, a considerable amount of economic activity is tempting us into buying things and making purchases that, in fact, are not good for us.
That we don't, number one, need, or we might want, but we don't need it.
Well, it goes further than that, and that is that this is automatic. So let me give you, the book begins with an example of this. It begins with the example of Molly. Molly is in Las Vegas, and she's addicted to gambling. And of course, what we find in Las Vegas is that the casinos have discovered wonderful ways in which they can take advantage of people who are addicted to gambling. And so Molly goes and she presses the button, and she presses the button, and she presses the button until she runs out of money. And then she has to go back and she has to earn the money. Yeah. And the odd thing about Molly is she knows that when she goes to the casino, she knows
the odds are against her.
More than that, she knows not just that the odds are against her, she knows that she's going to do that until her money runs out.
Okay, so those are the things that we've talked about before in other topics, for example, guns and gambling, drinking, smoking, all the above, that I think we would generally argue, we would generally agree that those aren't good for society in general, aside from a short-term bit of happiness. Now, the title, Phishing for Phools.
Yes.
I have a sneaky suspicion that pretty much everybody watching, or including myself, we're the fools.
That's right.
Because we buy into a lot of the marketing, we buy into the advertising, and I go to the store and I buy stuff that I pretty much won't ever use other than maybe once.
That could be the case, yes.
What does that say about the strength of the economy present time?
Okay, so what this says is that this is an equilibrium, that those things where you're fished for fools are not just there as happenstance, they're there because, in fact, if there's a profit to be made, it would be there.
Of course, that's what marketing's all about, to get you to buy things that you don't really need maybe right this second. I mean, that may not be a surprise to some people. When you wrote this book with Robert, at the end of the book, did you guys talk and say, oh my goodness, I can't believe we discovered this or that? Was there a great surprise you discovered from writing this?
Yeah, I think there was a big surprise. So most economics is based on the assumption that what people buy is what they want. But What this shows is, in fact, in a very significant swath of our lives, that this being fished for fools plays a significant role. So as I said, the onus was on us. The onus on us was not just to show that you had this equilibrium, which was a phishing equilibrium, but the difference between the phishing equilibrium and a totally benign equilibrium really made a difference. And so example after example after example, we show that, in fact, there's this phishing, and not only is there this phishing, but the phishing makes a difference. So what is the innovation here? The innovation is everybody knows that there's deception and manipulation. What's the innovation here is there's not just deception and innovation, and then people get tempted. It's the fact that this is what automatically occurs in a free market, that as long as there's going to be a profit to be made, it's going to be there.